Hello, my name's Adam Barsky and I'm a personal trainer and online coach, and I work predominantly with females over the age of 35 years old who've struggled to lose weight using conventional methods. So what do I mean by conventional methods? I mean by counting calories, so going on say a calorie restricted diet, monitoring your macros, getting your steps in, going to the gym X number of times a week. If you're finding that you're doing all those things, i.e. all the things that we're told to do, and you are still not losing weight, I'm here to explain the 5 reasons why you're possibly not getting the result that you would expect to get based on your hard work. So I'm going to explain why the low calorie diet doesn't necessarily work for you and how we can get the scales moving again. So I'd like to start off with a little bit of an apology on behalf of personal trainers. Like I said at the start, I'm a personal trainer. Why am I apologising on behalf of personal trainers? And that is because personal trainers in general aren't overly clued up from a nutritional perspective, and it's not their fault. So in terms of when you qualify as a personal trainer and you do your level 3 personal training course, the majority of what you learn is all about the exercises themselves. And I can recall when I did mine, there was maybe 3 or 4 questions on nutrition. And I can still remember now, one of those 3 or 4 questions on nutrition was this. It was the NHS guidelines state that you should have how many portions of fruit and vegetables per day? And the answers were multiple choice. And I can remember thinking back then, like, wow, like off the back of me doing this, I'm now expected to be at a level where I can give kind of nutritional advice to my clients, and this is the barrier to entry here. So yeah, in my opinion, personal trainers haven't had that training to be able to really help you on your weight loss journey. And what you'll generally find with personal trainers and their clients is clients will fit into one of 2 categories. Okay, so there's the first client that a personal trainer will give them a calorie target, a protein target, a step count, and a few workouts to do, and the weight will fall off them. Okay, so they'll meet their targets quite quickly. Then you've got the other 50% of people, which in my experience tends to be females over the age of 35 who, like I say, will reduce their calories significantly, do everything that they're told to do, stick to the plan perfectly, but just can't seem to lose the weight. And I kind of want to focus on that 50% of people. So it's not that you are doing anything wrong, it's just that the plan that you've been given isn't right for you. And the purpose of this video is for me to explain to you why you might fall into that category, and more importantly, how you can kind of overcome that obstacle to get the scales working in your favour once again. So I want to start off with a little bit of a story. So one of my clients, she won't mind me saying her name, she's called Sophie. So for the best part of a decade, she's worked with various personal trainers and online coaches hoping to lose weight. Now Sophie started working with me maybe 6 months ago now, and she came to me just completely deflated. And I think she'd worked with about 5 different trainers in the past year, and she's been around them all and just wanting to lose weight, and every single time she's failed to lose weight. So what I asked her to do was make me a little bit of a food diary. I made her an exercise plan, and I was confident that I could get things working for her. So anyway, I put her on a calorie control diet, and she followed it to a T. So I was monitoring her eating habits on MyFitnessPal, and week on week the scales were either not moving or they were slightly increasing. And I can remember thinking, what's kind of going on here? Like, I believed her when she said, I'm sticking to this. Do you know what I mean? She was kind of at breaking point at this point, saying I can't understand why the scales aren't moving. So at this point, I invested further into my own nutritional knowledge, because I felt like I was failing Sophie and I didn't want to be the next personal trainer to have failed her. So I began working with a PhD nutritionist who's formerly worked with professional footballers and professional cricketers in terms of trying to further my own nutritional knowledge, so that I could try and get a result for clients like Sophie. So yeah, that's what I did. Went away, leveled up my own nutritional knowledge, and based on what I've learned with the nutritionist who I continue to work with on a weekly basis, I applied a slightly different approach with Sophie that didn't involve counting calories whatsoever. And since then, she has lost a stone in weight, just over a stone, and she's managed to keep the weight off. And she openly said this is the first time in the last decade that I can recall being such a low weight and actually finding it sustainable, easy to stick to, and kind of taking the stress out of it in terms of not having to worry about constantly counting calories every day. Because let's face it, life's busy enough as it is. Who wants to be weighing out the food every day, counting macros? Do you know what I mean? Being starving, walking around hungry all day. I know someone once said to me that is being hungry just a side effect of dieting? And I said, yeah, if you're doing it wrong. So there is no reason why you should be starving and not losing weight at the same time. So my approach is going to effectively suppress your appetite in a way that you don't have that element of food noise every day, but you're still going to lose weight, as I say, without having to effectively punish yourself. Okay, so if you follow what I'm going to tell you to do, I would expect you to lose a minimum of 0.5 stone in your first 4 weeks and to continue losing weight here on in. And like I say, I am not going to ask you to weigh out food or anything time consuming like that, all the things that you've done in the past. I'm going to kind of flip the whole approach on its head. So I myself have adopted this way of eating. Initially, in the first instance, I thought to myself, I'm going to do it for 4 weeks just so I can kind of appreciate what my clients are going through. And I lost 0.5 stone myself. At that point, I wasn't bothered about losing any more weight. However, for me, I noticed a big change in my energy levels. So what I used to find is it'd get to mid-afternoon and I'd find myself like crashing. I'd feel like I desperately needed a nap and I couldn't get through the day unless I'd shut my eyes for maybe 20 minutes, half an hour. And as probably a lot of you know, life is too busy to have a nap in the middle of the day. At this point, I was thinking, I'm going to have to go to the doctor's here. There's something wrong with me. Since I changed my diet, I do not have any of them crashes in the afternoon anymore. So for that reason, I have now been just over 6 months now on this diet and feel the best that I've ever felt and training the best that I've ever felt as well. So yeah, like I say, if you've tried low calories in the past and you've failed to lose weight, it's not your fault. Just the approach has been the wrong approach for you. And I completely get it in terms of the fact that nutrition is confusing. So you're probably hearing loads of different kind of approaches from loads of different people, and it can be quite overwhelming in terms of knowing what the right approach is. So some people, for example, say you should limit your red meat intake. Some people say no, red meat's the best thing you can eat. Some people say eggs, you need to watch how many eggs you're eating in a week. Some people say no, eggs are brilliant. You know what I mean? Some people are saying avoid seed oils. Like, it can be a little bit of a minefield. So what I want to kind of do is act as a little bit of a guide for you and to cut through the noise and basically say, this is the approach that I propose for you. This is the result you'll get. And I'm so confident that I'm going to get you that result, that I do offer basically a money back guarantee. So anybody who works with me and doesn't lose at least 0.5 stone in their first 4 weeks doesn't actually pay me a penny. So I first did a talk similar to this in person, and I had 14 people attend. Off the back of it, I had 13 of the 14 people who said that they'd like to start working with me, and all 13 of those people did lose a minimum of 0.5 stone in the first 4 weeks. They've continued to work with me and they've continued to lose weight week on week. There was one person who came who didn't get on board with it. However, strangely enough, the following weekend I happened to see her doing a food shop in Sainsbury's, and I can recall just tapping in to see what was in her trolley, and it turned out that a lot of the food that was in the trolley was the sort of food that I'd recommended during the talk that I'd done a week earlier. And I kind of looked at her, I said, oh, are you trying this approach that I spoke about last week? And she kind of looked at me sheepishly and she said, yeah. And I said, no, that's absolutely brilliant. Like, no need kind of for me to hold your hand. If you feel like you can do it yourself, not a problem. Best of luck with it. If you do need any help, give me a shout. That was that. Anyway, I saw her in the gym maybe a week or two later and I asked her how it was going, and she looked at me and said, yeah, I'll be honest, I've stopped doing it. It's too difficult. I don't really know what I'm doing. Now, coincidentally, like I say, the other 13 people who are still working with me now have absolutely smashed it and they've continued to lose weight week on week. Yeah, the one person who obviously chose not to work with me long term ended up being the one who fell off the wagon effectively within the first couple of weeks and hasn't been able to maintain. So yeah, I'll get onto that at the end. But first, I want to touch on the basics in terms of why a Slimming World diet has been so popular over the years, and then go into detail as to why it potentially hasn't worked for you in terms of your weight loss journey. So, in terms of making this nice and simple, I just want to talk about what food is. And in order to explain what food is, I want to use the analogy of a car in comparison to the human body. So, our car can either run off petrol or it can run off diesel. And in a similar way, our body runs off food, and food is basically made up of 3 different types of macronutrients, which include carbohydrates, fat, and protein. Now, typically our body will run off either carbohydrates or fat, so it doesn't tend to like to run off protein. Protein is more for kind of recovery and muscle building. So, in terms of energy, so I'm going to talk a little bit about calories. So, what is a calorie? So, all a calorie is it's basically a measurement of how much energy is present within our food. So, in 1 gram of carbohydrates, we have approximately 4 calories. In 1 gram of protein, we have approximately also 4 calories. Whereas in 1 gram of fat, we have approximately 9 calories. Okay, so if you go to a personal trainer and you're wanting to lose weight, let's say your body needs 2,000 calories per day to adhere to the demands of the day, let's say, and this personal trainer decides to put you on a 1,500 calorie per day diet in order to create a calorie deficit for you of 500 calories. So you may have heard it said that there is approximately 3,500 calories in 1 pound of fat. So by putting you in a calorie deficit of 500 calories per day over the course of 7 days, i.e. a week, the theory is that you should essentially lose 1 pound of fat in that time. So in terms of looking at how many calories are in each of the macronutrients and the fact that we are trying to make this number as big as possible in order to lose as much weight in as short a time as possible, and we're looking to make this number as small as possible, it would make sense, okay, to fill our diet with either carbs or protein. Okay, fat, as you can see here, at 9 calories per gram is, from an energy perspective, it's quite expensive. So let's say we were to have 100 grams of carbs at 4 calories per gram, that's 400 calories, and also 100 grams of protein at another 400 calories, that's a combined total of 800 calories. But if we were to have 100 grams of fat at 9 calories per gram, that's 900 calories. So that's more than the carbs and the protein combined. Okay, so it makes sense from a slimming world perspective to go low fat. Okay, but this is the issue. So if you've struggled in the past by going low fat and low calorie to lose weight, I will explain why. So, like I said before, the body doesn't really like to use protein as an energy source. It likes to rely on carbs or fat. But if you are using the slimming world approach of going low fat, that means that by default, you are going higher carb. However, in the Western world, what we find is many of the carbohydrates that are present in our diet are highly refined. So what we call simple carbohydrates or white carbohydrates. And they are things like white rice, okay, white pasta, white bread, white potatoes, so sugar, so like biscuits, chocolate, sweets, that sort of thing. And what you probably find is that a lot of those foods have been chemically engineered by multi-million pound companies. For example, Kellogg's, who have the slogan that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, yet their products are very high sugar, very low fibre cereals that have been basically chemically engineered to make you be able to eat bowls and bowls and bowls of them without getting any fuller. Okay, it's not a coincidence that you could probably eat 5 bowls of Frosties and then still be hungry an hour later. They've been designed not to suppress your appetite, so that you buy more and more and more of it. So to kind of give you a little bit of an analogy here, let's say I was to give you a family-sized packet of Dorito crisps and I said to you, eat as many of these crisps as you want and give me the packet back once you've had enough. The chances are you're going to go through the whole bag of crisps and you're still probably going to be hungry, or say half an hour later, you're probably still going to want to eat a chocolate bar or something like that. Whereas, let's flip it, and if I was to give you, let's say, a block of cheese, so a block of cheese is predominantly protein and fat. If I give you that cheese and said, eat as much of this cheese as you want, and give it me back when you've had enough, chances are you'll have a few bites of this cheese and say, yeah, it's really tasty, but there's probably going to become a point long before you finish it that you say, do you know what, I've had enough now. And the reason for that is simple. It's because protein and fat combined suppresses your appetite in a way that, do you know what I mean, having refined carbs doesn't have that same effect. So if we're to look at it from an evolutionary perspective, so from an ancestral approach, so back going thousands and thousands of years, our ancestors did hunt the food. So essentially they would kill an animal for food, sorry if you're a vegan or vegetarian, and what that animal will be made of, is predominantly fat and protein. And that probably animal would last them a week or several weeks. So they'd eat this animal and they wouldn't be kind of eating 6 times a day. We wouldn't have the breakfast cereals and all that sort of stuff that we're eating in the modern times. It would be meat and fat, and that would be enough for the kind of human body to feed off on. So in terms of a lot of people now who say, oh no, you need to be eating little and often, that's not how we used to do it X thousands of years ago. Do you know what I mean? And coincidentally, all of a sudden now we have such a problem with obesity. I think the stat is something like 78% of people in this country are overweight, which is shocking. And I'd be kind of questioning, well, where are we going wrong here? And for me, the answer is kind of blaringly obvious as to why that's the case. But going back in terms of what I was talking about in terms of refined carbohydrates and what I spoke about in the previous video in terms of me, myself, in terms of my energy levels. So when I was going, where I work, next door to the gym, there is a like a bakery, like a sandwich shop. And I used to go there every day for my lunch. And what I would find is I would, being a creature of habit that I am, I would generally order the same thing every day, which was a white baguette with chicken, stuffing, gravy and cranberry sauce. And don't get me wrong, it was really, really tasty. But what I was finding is, I've got a little bit of a graph here. So I've got time at the bottom and energy over here. So what I was finding is my energy levels would be here. I'd go and eat my white sandwich and my energy levels would shoot up like this. And after maybe an hour or so, I'd feel myself getting really lethargic, really tired. So my energy levels were basically dropping right the way down here. Now what's happening there is basically I've eaten this highly refined carbohydrates, the white bread with obviously the cranberry sauce and everything. And what's happening is my energy levels are shooting up. So they shoot up here, and what happens naturally is what goes up must come down. So as my blood sugar starts to drop, okay, so maybe an hour or so later, my brain, which is running off predominantly glucose, so it's running off predominantly sugar, starts to panic and thinks, oh my God, my blood sugar levels here are dropping. If I continue on this downward trend here, I'm gonna die. So what it does is it basically, like your mobile phone, if it was on low battery, would go into low power mode. Your brain does a very similar thing to your body, and it basically starts to slow everything down. So that's where you might notice that in mid-afternoon, after you've had quite a highly refined carb meal or eating, do you know what I mean, sugary snacks like your crisps, your sugar, your chocolate, your sweets, you'll find yourself getting tired. All that is, it's a process that's happening in your body where everything's slowing down to conserve energy. But what happens when we get like that? We tend to then reach for more sugar in order to get back up here again. And so the process continues throughout the day. It's like a little bit of a roller coaster, your ups and your downs. But every time you're reaching for more food to bring your energy levels up, you're consuming more and more calories. So quite frankly, it's not really sustainable, in my opinion, to live your life like that. So the approach that I kind of adopt is I try and cut out all refined carbohydrates from my diet. I'm not saying I completely cut out carbs altogether. I do personally consume complex carbohydrates. So what do I mean by that? By that I mean brown pasta, brown rice, sweet potato, things like that. And what I find with my energy levels now is I start from the same spot here, but instead of having these big spikes and these big drops, my energy levels generally tend to be quite constant throughout the day. So like I said, I don't have the big spikes, don't have the big drops, and off the back of that, I don't feel like in the middle of the day I need to be having a nap. So quite often I'm up very early with my kids and I'm getting home from work quite late. Usually I'd be absolutely shattered by that point and my eyes would be shutting driving home from work, and there's no chance I could kind of watch anything on television. My eyes would be shutting. Now I feel like I get home and my energy levels are how they should be basically, and it's not like I have any trouble sleeping when I do want to go to bed. So going back to my previous example then, if your body needs 2,000 calories per day and you're put on a 1,500 calorie per day diet, meaning you're in a 500 calorie per day deficit, where do you think that 500 calories is going to come from? So your body needs 2,000 calories to go about adhering to the demand of the day. You're only giving it 1,500 calories, so it needs another 500 calories. Where is it going to get it from? If you're thinking the answer to that, okay, is that it's going to come from your fat stores, you would only be partly right. Okay, so being a massive nutrition geek that I've now become, I've delved deep into the nutrition archives and I found a study which is called the Minnesota Starvation Experiment, which was done in the 1950s. Now, the basis of this study was that a controlled group of people were put on a 1,600 calorie per day diet. Now, as I spoke about on the previous videos, the concept being that there is roughly 3,500 calories in 1 pound of fat. So the concept was that over a 6-month period, okay, of being on a 1,600 calorie per day diet, that this group of people had a deficit that had been created for them, which suggested that they should lose a grand total of 32 kilograms of fat in that time. Okay, fast forward 6 months and they looked at the results, and it transpired that they hadn't lost 32 kilos in that time. Instead, they had only lost 16.8 kilograms of weight. And when they looked further into the data, it transpired that of that 16.8 kilograms, only 8.8 kilograms had come from fat. So the remaining 8 kilograms of weight loss had actually come from lean body mass. So what do we mean by that? Basically from like glycogen, from water, from muscle. So when we're trying to lose weight, what we actually want to lose is fat. If I'm losing weight and I'm losing it from my bicep, that's not going to make me any fitter or any healthier. You want to be reducing your body fat, but holding on to as much and building as much lean body mass, i.e. lean muscle, as possible. So as you can see here, only 55% of the weight that was lost came from fat. However, using the approach that I would like to tell you a little bit about, which is called the ketogenic diet, what I propose is that of the weight that you lose, 98% of that weight loss will come purely from fat, and only 2% will come from lean body mass, i.e. water, glycogen, that sort of thing. So hopefully that sounds appealing, and hopefully this will make sense as to why you have been struggling to lose weight by purely trying to adhere to a low calorie, low fat diet, and it'll help you to understand how you can start getting the scales moving again and start to lose weight, and also maintain and build lean muscle tissue as you are losing weight. So a lot of coaches will probably tell you that no, you have to kind of, if you're wanting to build muscle, you need to go into a massive calorie surplus, pile on a load of weight and then lose the fat. Do you know what I mean? What I'm saying to say to you is no, we can lose fat at the same time as building muscle. So the $1 million question then is, if I can't lose weight from restricting my calories, how am I supposed to lose weight? And the reason why a lot of you probably are in that boat where you've tried doing all the right things and nothing seems to work for you is because you've built up resistance to a hormone in your body known as insulin. So what is insulin? So to give an example of consuming a sandwich. So 2 slices of white bread, which equates to roughly 40 grams of carbohydrates. So when you eat a sandwich, what happens is glucose is released into the bloodstream. So at any one time you have roughly 1 to 2 teaspoons of sugar in your blood. When you consume a sandwich, you have roughly 10 to 12 grams of sugar in the blood, which is toxic for the body. So what happens then is your pancreas will release the hormone called insulin, which will deliver that sugar around the body to wherever it's needed for energy. So it'll deliver it to your organs, to your brain, to your heart. It'll deliver it to your muscles, for example. So the way insulin works is very similar to the way alcohol works, in the sense that, let's say you're 18 years old and you're going for your first night out around town, you might have a glass of wine and you might feel quite intoxicated off that one glass of wine. But let's say over the years you regularly consume alcohol, your body then gets quite resistant to the effects of alcohol. So what maybe in the past meant that you had to have 1 glass of wine to get to a certain level of intoxication, now you need maybe 5, 6, 7 glasses of wine to reach them same levels. So insulin works in a similar way, in the sense that, let's say you had an individual who was quite sensitive to insulin, they consume a sandwich, okay, their body produces 1 unit of insulin to deal with that sandwich. Like I say, one of the byproducts of insulin is it blocks your body's ability to burn fat. So what I want you to see it, to use the sandwich analogy, is that we've got your fat locked away in a vault and we want to access that fat. But your body, having consumed the sandwich, has just stimulated a unit of insulin. So I want you to see that as 1 security guard that is blocking your fat stores. You, over a prolonged period of time, constantly stimulate insulin, so you're constantly consuming refined carbohydrates. So it's refined carbohydrates that stimulate insulin the most out of all the macronutrients. Yes, protein stimulates insulin, but nowhere near as much as carbohydrates do, and in particular refined carbohydrates. Fat hardly has any effect on your insulin levels. So if you continue to eat, let's say, refined carbs or high amounts of sugar over a prolonged period of time, okay, what might then happen is, in order to deal with the effects of that sandwich, your body now needs to produce 2 units of insulin, okay, in order to deal with that blood sugar. So that's effectively 2 security guards that are guarding your fat stores. Again, fast forward X amount of time of eating a refined carb diet, your body then needs 5 units of insulin to deal with that sandwich, which is then 5 security guards. That then turns into 10, that turns into 15. Okay, before we know it, we need 20 units of insulin to deal with that sandwich. Now, these are all arbitrary figures. However, the maximum amount of insulin that your pancreas can produce is 15 units. Okay, so that's already 15 security guards guarding your fat stores, making it very difficult for your body to utilize fat for energy. However, to deal with the effects of the glucose on the sandwich, we need 20 units of insulin, but we can only produce 15 units. That's what we call type 2 diabetic. So that's when we have to inject ourselves with the extra insulin in order to bring our blood sugar back down again. In terms of optimizing your health and improving your overall body composition, I would say there are three main factors that you need to basically accomplish in order to achieve your goal. So the first one, okay, is going to be the ability to burn fat. The second one is going to be the ability to maintain and build lean body mass. And the third one is to be able to suppress your appetite. And I would say that there are 5 main reasons where people fail in terms of either being able to burn fat, being able to maintain and build lean muscle tissue, and being able to suppress their appetite. So I imagine that if you're struggling to lose weight, you're probably falling foul of one of the 5 things that I'm about to talk about now. So the first one, okay, is, as I've already touched on, carbohydrates. So in particular, refined carbohydrates. So as I previously mentioned, if you're excessively consuming carbohydrates, what's happening is you're increasing the insulin levels in your body. And as I mentioned before, when we're increasing insulin, high amounts of insulin in the body closes the door on your body's ability to burn fat. So it fails on that one. And if your body isn't able to access your fat stores, but it's not getting enough energy from the outside in terms of a sufficient amount of calories, what's it going to turn to? It's going to turn to your bicep for energy. So it's going to fail on the second one. And again, as I've mentioned previously, certainly refined carbohydrates have no sort of satiety in terms of suppressing your appetite. So you'll find that you'll have your bag of crisps and you're going to be hungry again half an hour later. So it fails on that one. The second one, where I believe a lot of people fall short, is in terms of their protein consumption. Now, as I mentioned, in terms of the Minnesota starvation experiment, when people were losing weight from being in a calorie deficit, roughly only 50% of that weight loss was coming from fat. The other 50% was coming from lean body mass. So what happens is when you're strength training regularly and you're consuming sufficient amounts of protein in order to build and maintain that muscle mass, okay, what's happening then is when you are in a calorie deficit, it's going to encourage your body to burn fat and leave that hard-earned muscle alone. Okay, so if you're not getting enough protein, okay, you're going to start wasting away your lean body mass. And if you are in a calorie deficit and your body's then using your lean body mass for energy, it then means that the fat's going to be left alone. So you're going to struggle to burn fat if you were not eating sufficient amount of protein. Then in terms of your appetite, so of all the macronutrients, protein is the most satiating. So you probably find, for example, if you were to have a couple of chicken breasts, you're going to struggle to eat much more than that. If I was to try and give you 3 or 4 chicken breasts, you're probably going to say, no, I've had enough there. It suppresses your appetite a lot more than carbohydrates do, and a lot more than fats do. So if you're not getting enough protein, you're going to struggle to suppress your appetite and then consequently probably overeat. Okay, so the third one where I think a lot of people fall short is in terms of their sleep. So that's sleep in terms of sleep quantity, but also sleep quality. So generally speaking, when you're not getting sufficient amounts of sleep, so let me give you an example. If I was to go 5 nights on the bounce with less than 6 hours sleep per night, I would have the insulin levels of a pre-type 2 diabetic. So like I said before, when your insulin is high, which it does increase significantly when you have a lack of good quality sleep, that closes the door on your body's ability to burn fat for energy. Therefore, it will fail on that one. Now, you've probably heard it said that muscles are built in the gym or muscles are built in the kitchen. I'll throw a third one in the mix here and say I think that muscles are built in the bedroom, in the sense that, yes, you're breaking down your muscles when you exercise in the gym. You're refueling your muscles in terms of consuming your protein, in terms of your meals. But it's when you are in REM sleep, so that's rapid eye movement sleep, so that's a deep sleep, is when your body starts to produce testosterone and it starts to recover and rebuild the muscles that you've broken down. So if you're not getting sufficient amount of sleep and a sufficient amount of good quality sleep, okay, you're going to struggle to build and maintain lean body mass. So it fails on that one. Now, you can probably relate to the following day after you've had a bad night's sleep, waking up. What's the first thing you're going to turn to? Are you going to want to cook your healthy breakfast, or you just want to grab something that's quick and easy? So what you'll find is after a poor quality night's sleep, your body produces 30% more of the hormone ghrelin. So what ghrelin is, it's basically that hunger feeling in your stomach when you're basically really craving food. So on average, after a poor night's sleep, you will consume anywhere between 200 and 600 additional calories from what you would normally eat. So yeah, from an appetite perspective, poor quality sleep, you're going to fail in terms of appetite. So the fourth one is a little bit of more of an obscure one. It's your gut health. So basically in your gut, you have trillions and trillions of bacteria. So some of them are good and some of them are bad. So the bad bacteria, they predominantly feed off sugar. And if you're constantly giving them sugar, i.e. refined carbohydrates, that's keeping them happy. When they're happy, they're putting you in an inflamed state. Okay, when you're inflamed, that drives up insulin. When insulin's driven up, that closes the door on your body's ability to burn fat for energy. So it fails on this one. Okay, when you provide in your body with enough fibre, so things like cruciferous vegetables, so things like broccoli, foods like nuts, for example, that are high in fibre, that's basically feeding your good bacteria. So when your good bacteria are happy, let's say, that basically means that your brain is satisfied. You've probably heard it said that your gut is basically your second brain. So if you're not giving your body enough of what it needs, i.e. enough fibre, basically your good bacteria are going to send a signal to your brain to basically say, go out and get me some more food, give me what I want, basically. So that's going to produce cravings and you're going to fail from an appetite perspective. Okay, and then as I mentioned before, if your insulin levels are high, which means you can't burn fat for energy, but you're not getting enough energy from the outside, your body's going to turn to your lean body mass, so it's going to fail on that one. And the fifth one, which I think most people who are trying to lose weight, this is the one where most people fall short. Can you guess what it is? It's probably a difficult one to cut out this time of year, but it is alcohol. Okay, so I'm not talking about alcohol from a calorie perspective. So yes, alcohol contains empty calories. What do I mean by empty calories? There are basically X number of calories in, say, a pint of beer or a glass of wine, and those calories provide your body with zero nutritional value. Okay, but what I'm talking about in this example is alcohol in its purest form. Okay, so when you're consuming alcohol, you're stimulating insulin. Okay, like I've said before, when we stimulate insulin, our body is then unable to burn fat for energy. It closes the door on our body's ability to burn fat. Now, the effects of alcohol can basically last, in terms of your increased levels of insulin, for anywhere between kind of 12 and 72 hours, depending on how insulin resistant you are. So you may well be in a calorie deficit. You may well have kind of been eating fewer and fewer calories throughout the day, knowing that you've got a night out planned. But if you're then consuming alcohol that evening, it doesn't matter that you're in a calorie deficit, because your insulin levels are sky high. They're going to stay sky high for up to 72 hours, which means for the next 72 hours, your body can't burn fat for energy. And if you're not getting enough fuel in terms of your food, okay, we're unable to burn fat for energy. What's then going to happen? Okay, our body's going to turn to our lean body mass. Equally, if you were to do, say, a heavy lifting session in the gym, okay, that's basically getting your muscles, let's say, breaking down your muscles and starting the process of protein synthesis. So protein synthesis is basically where your muscles are going to start growing back. However, if you consume alcohol after a lifting session, you're going to limit the levels of protein synthesis. So let's say you did a heavy session, you were going to get 100% protein synthesis after that session. If you're consuming alcohol, you're probably only going to get 70% protein synthesis. You're only going to get 70% of the reward off the back of your kind of hard efforts. So you're going to fail on this one. And do I really need to go into detail in terms of appetite and alcohol? So you've been for a heavy night out on the drink, it gets to 3 o'clock in the morning. Where do you see everyone hanging out at that time? Okay, it's in McDonald's, it's in the kebab shop, it's in the takeaway pizza shop. Okay, and then that not only makes you make bad food choices from an appetite perspective on the night, but you wake up the following morning hungover. What are you going to have when you're hungover? Are you going to have your avocado and poached eggs on sourdough toast? Probably not. You're probably going to head straight to the McDonald's drive-through, and then that evening's going to come. You're probably still going to feel rubbish, and you're going to be ringing up your local Chinese takeaway. So in terms of alcohol, it fails on this one. So hopefully you found what I've spoke about so far useful, and if so, could I just ask for 5 extra minutes of your time just to tell you about a little program that I've put together. So basically it's a 4-week program, and it is priced at £149. Okay, so within that program, okay, you're getting one-to-one with me, in which we go through a online, okay, nutrition review. So basically what that means is I'm going to look at your kind of diet and see how best I can help you using my approach. So for example, someone who is currently consuming quite a highly refined carbohydrate diet, I'll probably give you a slightly different plan to someone who is already eating relatively clean. So it's all quite kind of subjective to where you're at currently. Okay, I will also give you a tailored meal plan and recipes. Okay, so that's centered around basically your likes and dislikes. So for example, if you, like me, don't particularly like fish, I'm not going to ask you to eat fish. I'm going to tailor it around your kind of food preferences. Okay, I'll also give you an exercise plan. So a lot of you may already be working with, say, personal trainers already. That's absolutely fine if that's the case. Just if you're not and you're wanting that kind of extra help and accountability in terms of your exercise regime, that's something that I'm happy to help you with as part of working with me nutritionally. Okay, you'll also get access to our WhatsApp group. So there's currently 23 ladies in that group at the minute, all really supportive of one another. So if someone's having a bad day or struggling, they tend to put a message in the group, and then everyone is kind of there to support them and help them get through it. Again, we share quite a lot of recipes within that group chat, so it's really useful. I'll put in quite a few messages as well throughout the week, so little hints and tips and basically support from me in a group setting. We also have a group Zoom call once per week, so I tends to be on a Monday evening. We'll jump on Zoom. I'll either do a little bit of teaching around this topic, or I'll just be jumping on to sit on Zoom, and whoever jumps on can kind of use me for that hour to discuss anything they want. Okay, like I mentioned earlier on, I also work with a nutritionist, and this PhD nutritionist is putting on like a seminar for you guys once per month. So it'll be on a different topic each month. So for example, around about the Christmas period, it tends to be how to tailor your diet around the festive period, things like that, which a lot of the current clients find really useful. Okay, what's more, I'm going to give you a full money back guarantee. Okay, and I guarantee that in the next 4 weeks, okay, you will lose a minimum of half a stone if you follow what I tell you to do. And if you don't lose half a stone, I'll give you your £149 back, no questions asked. Okay, so you've literally got nothing to lose. Okay, I am limiting this offer to 7 people. Okay, so say I've got 23 people in the group now. I'm wanting to cap it at 30 people so I can basically give as much support to everyone without getting kind of overwhelmed with it. And this offer is going to run until Sunday. Okay, so if you are fed up of counting calories and monitoring macros and weighing out your food and basically going hungry to try and lose weight and only getting mediocre results off the back of it, I'm really keen to start working with you. So I will put the payment details just below this video, and hopefully start working with you very soon. Thank you for listening.